very well known in this community. If you do something wrong, I am, as a person, perhaps not nearly as well known as that person. It doesn't mean that there should be a different set of laws applied to them, because the young boy at C.H. Reeves is going to look at that and say, you know what? Certain people get by with certain things when I myself can't get by with the same thing. And that then, it perpetuates this what's needful is lawful mentality. Okay. Because it says that the law is not blind. It will benefit a certain few. And so if it's not going to be the same for me as it is for that person, I have to get it somehow, because it's not gonna make it, the playing field is not level. And I wanna say too that as far as, someone was saying, I think it was Professor Rex Nettleford the other day, was having a conversation with Jeffrey Lloyd. And he was saying, and this is extremely powerful, that a Bahamian once told him that the Bahamas is Dade County East. Whereas Professor Nettleford said that Dade County is considered Jamaica North. Something to that effect. Do you know what that says? Primarily, what that says is that the Jamaican culture is so strong that it encapsulates and just completely wraps itself around anything it touches. But what has happened is we have allowed American culture to come here and wrap itself around us. And we have, by extension, become American. And so we have to focus on what it means to be Bahamian once again.
Dr. Mullins has said so many things in that short space of time, and that I'm not sure I can capture on all of them. But just yesterday, I was talking to a young man that many people consider to be radical, and he's all about the Afro-Bohemian, and he says, Star, we need to educate our young men what it is to be young men, and we have to do that from a perspective that comes from Africanism. Now, I don't necessarily agree with all of his thoughts and philosophies, but his thing was about allowing people, especially young men, to identify with who they really are, and to build a sense of self-respect, of connecting to something so that they are able to say, okay, this is my home, and I want to care for it. He honestly feels as if you build young men, you are then able to build generations and people that come after you, because the young man is where it should start from. Because a young man will then take care of his wife and his home and all of those things. And so what he said was very powerful, because it brings us back to this identity and this cultural aspect of things. And we need to begin to be able to focus on that. This plan, this education system should be about teaching us to be Bahamian in the true sense of the word, and allowing us to find pride in that. And while we're talking about prisons...
But when you say that, are you saying that to be Bahamian in that sense, that Bahamian you're talking about is not a prisoner? It's not a young woman who is having... Okay.
See, we need to...
So you're saying the best of what we have
the best
always been.
of what we've always been and what we can be. And that is what we need to define in this plan. What do we want a young person to be in 5 years? What type of values? What do we want them to think about? What do we want them to see as the Bahamas? What do we want them to feel about being Bahamian? What does that really mean? And that is what this plan needs to define. And while we're talking about prisons, I want us to just also take into consideration the present state of our prison. And how are we developing the young men that go in there? And the sad thing is that if you don't have money in this country, you are not going to get off like the person that has money, and that is the fact. And once you go there, what are we going to do to develop you and to make you better? What is the current state of social services and the way we look out for our young men? Are the churches really being involved in saying, okay, let's have an adopt a prisoner program. You're coming out on parole, and so now I'm going to work with you to try to get you a job, even if it's just cutting the grass for a while, to try to help you get you on your feet. Are we really taking this thing seriously from a community aspect? We talk about going back to basics, but basics back then was a community thing. And when the family fails, like it has, we must begin to step in as educators and as people from around the community and the church and help to develop a nation again. And like I say, and I encourage people to think, and I often say my generation, but you guys, a little older than me, but I can be included as well. We must begin to sacrifice. We must begin to sacrifice the things, the materialism, to begin to educate the people that come up underneath us that this is not the way to go.
Sacrifice.
Sacrifice. It's a hard word.
You talking to Bahamians?
I'm talking, well, look here. They don't have to agree with what I'm saying, but they need to respect what I say. And that sacrifice is the only way we're going to make this country better. And that is to sacrifice the things that we find to be so common. You need to have this, you need to have that, in order to teach people, especially the young generations coming up, What do you need?
Again, right? You talk about sacrifice, right?
And to come to you.
In the most recent time, right? We had the gas crisis, right? But you know something? You didn't see any of the cabinet ministers get rid of those big cars and went small, right? They didn't lead by example, right? We could have changed. Again, there's some simple things we can do. We could have changed the duty. If you buy one of those small little cars, 10% duty. Trust me, within 2 to 3 years, we will have small little cars on this island, and all the big cars will go away. Now, you know something? Some of the dealers, the automobile dealers may not like it, but you know something? We have to start making decisions that is for the best of this country. We can't think about the few, we have to think about the majority.
Okay. Andrew?
I think it's, idealistic sometimes when we talk about, everybody getting on board, the church playing their part, this one getting involved, teaching this sort of patriotism. Yes, these are things that are going to take time. But the reality is that we have a social problem that is, it's eating away at the core of this country. And, when you look at a single mother, she has 5, 6 kids, she's poorly educated. Those 5, 6 kids go out, they have kids early. By the end of the day, they have 5, 6 kids of their own. You got 35 people living in abject poverty. Yep. And all of the social consequences that come with that. And so I think, in a way, we sort of need to look at some form of when you look at that single mother, some form of affirmative action in this country that helps, that puts her in a position where, because once you educate her, you put her in a position where she can get a decent job. Yeah. That trickles down to that 35 other people who would have been a strain on this society.
Okay. I saw a headline, I think it was 2 Mondays ago, that simply fascinates me. Flowers, with a group of companies, or whatever it's called.
Open it up, Philip. Open it up.
Donates $100,000 to NEMA.
Interesting.
On the front pages. And when you flip it over, Bahamas Christian Council, on the second page, donates $20,000, or maybe it was $10,000 to NEMA. And I have to say that, because where are the principles? Yeah. To me, that was a perfect opportunity. And I have nothing personally against the principles, Mr. Flowers. But if we are to operate by a set of rules and laws and legislations, a spade has to be a spade. A broken window has to be a broken window, no matter where it is. Yeah. And it just goes back to the fundamentals of a society.